Welcome to Bunch Formation, a college football podcast. My name is Chris Vanini, and I've got 5 newborn puppies in my house right now. He is David Ubben. He's had a bit of a nightmare week as a father.
Can confirm.
On today's show, we're going to talk about some new premium seats at Ohio State, a new apparel for Boston College, a lot of anonymous coach quotes about several top college football teams, might get into college baseball, and I have an issue with the NBA Finals, which we will wrap up at the end of the show. But first, Ubben, are you doing okay?
No. Tuesday probably had top 3 worst day as a parent, maybe ever. Okay.
For you, not of all.
For
parents.
me. So I'll try to make this quick. I'll put it on paper. We have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Monday night, our nanny, babysitter, whatever you want to call it, says she's sick, so she can't do her thing on Tuesday. So I got to get some work done, but also have to kind of watch the girls. So I take them to an indoor playground cafe and get a coffee and hang out and just get some work done. It was fine. My oldest does not want to leave, so she is screaming. I'm dragging this screaming child out of this indoor playground. She also swipes at my face and scratches me across the face. It should be boy. So I'm bleeding from the face. She's melting down. She's like, "Let me out!" Screaming in her car seat. I had a cookie in the car at one point. Gave her a cookie, and she says, "No, thank you!" Screaming. This mom who saw me in this predicament and was coming out of Home Goods offered me a bag of cookies to help calm my child down. It did not help, but anyway, I appreciate the sentiment.
Well, at least she was polite about it, your daughter, saying no, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we go home, we grab some food. We're overdue for nap time and lunchtime at this point. The youngest, she's very food focused. It's overdue for her lunch. She starts screaming. We have a double meltdown in the back seat. We're overdue for naps. We're overdue for lunch. And then I hear the flop, 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 flat tire.
Oh, no.
On the highway. Fortunately, I'm able to drive it on it long enough to get off the highway. But I'm trying to focus on getting the jack and doing all this stuff it's 90 degrees and hot. And trying to get that changed while both of them are screaming, trying to pay attention. Long story short, we did make it home, but then I got to get all their lunches ready. My wife got home. She brought some food home from work, and I said, I'm going to eat. I'm going to shower. I need no one to demand anything of me for a little bit, and then I will rejoin the family. Anyway, all that to say,
you made it.
It's not
a great pitch. Not a great pitch for parenthood. I don't have kids, but I'm sure a lot of the parents who are listening to the show can relate and have probably been in a situation like David.
I cannot tell you the panic that went through my blood, knowing we were already overdue to get home. And
I'm stressed just listening to this, and it's already done. Everything's okay, thank God. But yeah, well, sorry you had to deal with that. We've got some newborn pups here. They're easy the first couple of weeks. We got one of our dogs, the mama dog. Everything's going great with them. So I post some pictures on social media. You may see them, but in a couple weeks, they may be chirping on this podcast when they get of age. If you guys haven't checked out the show notes before on your podcast, we've got timestamps in there now. If you want to jump ahead to another part of the show, again, please send all emails and feedback to bunchformationpod@gmail.com. We are reading all of those. We are responding to, if not all of those, most of those. We're at Bunch Formation on pretty much all social media. Please give us 5 stars in a review. We will read every 5-star review on the show. And we do have another one. Shout out to Smitty Frog, who says, quote, perfect CFB vibes podcast. I am assuming he's a TCU fan, potentially. So this is what Smitty Frog said. Been following Ubben since the Flyover Country podcast.
That's a deep cut. That's a deep cut. That's a Patreon show from 2017, 16, maybe. It's a while ago.
So excited to still have his sometimes great and sometimes unbelievably bad takes in my ears.
Some would say ahead of their time, but all right.
Chris makes for a great counterweight, and the vibes are perfect as a host. Both are not too serious and able to poke fun at themselves and the sport at large, which is important because the sport can be ridiculously stupid at times, but always fun. I'm glad you said that to me, Frog. That is what we're going for. We're trying to do the news, and we've gotten some emails from people who said, "I'm glad you explained something this way because it was kind of confusing." But we also have people saying, "I'm glad you point out how stupid things are," because that is how it's
some other housekeeping we have, Chris.
Yes,
we are doing a Reddit AMA on the CFB Reddit page. It can be war there sometimes between the warring factions of fan bases. It's a fun place. I'll poke my head in there sometimes. Anyway, we'll be doing a Reddit AMA on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern on the Reddit CFB page. So if you're listening to this before then, come ask us questions. If it's after, you can go check it out anyway. Our answers to lots of interesting questions, I'm sure. I saw some Uber Eats questions in there. Listen, I will defend my wing situation at the coaches convention until the day I die. That was fine. But anyway, yeah, we can link that in the show notes as well. But come check out the AMA that Chris and I are doing on Reddit. We got a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
Yes. Also, last episode, we had a message from Niall from Scotland who was asking what college football team he should adopt and root for. We spent a good amount of time on that. We went through a lot of options. I checked in with Niall after the show. He did listen to it, and he's got a response. We're going to get an update kind of on who he is trying to pick as his team over in Scotland. Niall says, quote, "I can confirm I am not a Mormon, and my only knowledge of their culture comes from the Book of Mormon musical, so BYU might need to be out." Sorry, Evan. I liked the Texas A&M suggestion, and as I am a Rams fan, the USC connection seems sensible too. Tennessee appeals because, as far as I can tell, they have no QB, which is intriguing. And surely from there, the only way is up. Maybe.
Aguilar's going to be okay.
He says, "I'll watch some A&M and some USC in the fall, and I'll come back to you. Enjoying the show. You're doing a good job so far." Good to know, Niall. Keep us updated. Maybe you go through the season and pick a team. This is kind of a fun thing. I didn't expect that to become what it did, but it's not very often someone from Scotland tells you you're trying to become a college football fan. So trying to grow the sport here. Also got an email from Mark Johnson for you, Ubben. He said Baylor, Oklahoma, and Baylor TCU in 2011 should be honorable mention for top 25 games of the 2000s, which you wrote about a couple weeks ago. Probably
interesting. I was
games, right?
at both of those games. Baylor, Oklahoma was basically when RG3 won the Heisman. Baylor TCU in 2011, great game, back and forth. This is back when TCU was still in the Mountain West. Baylor kind of rallied. RG3 had a key third down reception in that game, actually. That was an Art Briles tight end masterclass. That game was unbelievable. I mean, I think if you look at that list, one of the main criticisms I had of the Michigan App State game is that might have been the only game in September on that whole list. Baylor TCU, if I recall, is a Friday night game in week 1. Great game, didn't quite have enough stakes for me. Baylor Oklahoma definitely decided the Heisman, but I don't think Baylor. I'm trying to remember. I don't think they won the Big 12.
Was that the game that was the throw and it was like deflected up and Baylor made the catch?
That was RG3 to Kendall Wright, like a deflected ball over the top, and then the throw to Terrence Williams in the end zone to basically win the game in the final seconds. Basically won the Heisman for RG3. A great game. It did just basically decide a Heisman. Yeah, I mean, Baylor, Oklahoma, probably closer. Blake Bell had a really good game. The Belldozer had some great moments in that game. Baylor TCU just lacked the stakes, but a great football game. Like, that was really memorable. I remember both those games. I was definitely at both those games. So, yeah, good suggestions, but I don't think they pass up Ohio State, Michigan 2016, which were on the list. But good suggestions, Mark. I like the energy there. Those were good considerations. I didn't really give either of them consideration for the list, but I should have at least maybe looked at them. So honorable mention, sure.
Fair enough. Thanks for the email. Remember, that's bunchformationpod@gmail.com. So with that, we will get into the news segment of the show, the media scrum.
That's why I don't read the newspaper.
Because it's garbage. Ohio State has announced new premium seating. I think it's like 400, 500 seats maybe, right in front of the student section in the what is technically the open end zone of the horseshoe. It's the kind of seating you see at a lot of NFL stadiums now that are like right on the field.
Yeah, I believe they call them Loge boxes, I believe. I don't know that AT&T Stadium, the Cowboys Stadium, was like the first one to do it. I don't know if they were the first ones, these like field level, like sweet ideas. But that was the first one that I remember. It's not a great seat, frankly.
No, that's the first thing. I mean, first off, that wasn't the reason I brought it up, but yes, I don't like seats that are right down low. Like I wouldn't want to sit front row at a football game, especially in the end zone. I'd almost rather be like second deck if you're close to the 50, somewhere where
the end zone
would have a good view of everything.
The end zone is decent, like in overtime, but anybody who's like, so like at the end of games, you're going down to the sidelines at a lot of places, most places. Some of them are doing away with that, but I try to, at every game I cover, try to go down, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, the last few minutes of the game. And it's very hard to see kind of what's going on. Like you can get a pretty good sense, and obviously you can watch, but like route combinations, like you see how violent and how fast the game is. But as far as like digesting what really happened on that play, very, very difficult. Like if I'm down there and some key play happens, like before I write, I usually want to go back and watch TV copy to just see it. So watching a whole game, I don't know if I'd pay big money to do that.
But the real reason I'm bringing this up is because it's where the band used to be at Ohio State. And so they are now moving the band to the other side of the field, the other end zone in the curved part of the horseshoe. And a lot of fans aren't happy about it. Now, apparently that's where the band used to be before 2001, according to Ohio State. They renovated the stadium in like 2001, and that's when the band went there. But moving the band away from the student section seems a weird thing to do for college football. Like first off, like every band you think of is with the students. That's kind of the point of the whole thing. So I've seen a lot of Ohio State fans mad at AD Ross Bjork. It's a move to every school is looking to make more money.
Yes.
And this was the place to do it because the other side of the field, they used to have the track around Ohio State for a while, but the seats are pretty low on that side. So it's not like you could put those seats in front of those. But Ohio State fans not happy about moving the band. Ubben, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the tension that is happening in college sports. You see it in basketball, you see it in baseball, you see it in football. Fans want atmosphere and a really good home field advantage. And I think in some degree, ADs want that. But right now, the most important job you have is fundraising and finding money in other places. And sometimes you have to do that if you want to try and, bring money to try and balance the budget as rev share is coming in. Do that in ways that sacrifice atmosphere, that sacrifice home field advantage, and move out key seats to like loud students or like ticket buying fans, like to the people that, are probably not going to be as rowdy during the game. And the fans that complain about that, like, I hear you, that sucks. And this is sort of the tension that college sports finds itself in. And you're going to see outcomes like this happen. So I don't like it. I get the complaints. They're fair. You should be complaining about this. I don't know that your complaints are going to be listened to.
No. And when you hear private equity groups or other people who see college sports and think there are obvious ways to make more money, that's an example of what they're talking about. There's that. There's advertisements on the jerseys, which could happen. I don't think it's going to happen as quickly as people thought. It's got to be approved by the rules committee, weirdly, because it's a uniform thing, technically. And that hasn't gone through there yet. Another one, I think Michigan, I want to say a few months ago, emailed their fans for like a survey on how much change they would accept if it meant more money for Michigan to pay to players, like advertising in Michigan Stadium, which famously forever did not have any, and I don't think still doesn't have any permanent advertising in the whole stadium. So this is, it's a revenue sharing era now, and it's a lot of fan bases are going to be having these types of discussions with their.
I'm fine with advertising on the jerseys. It's whatever. We did it on the field.
I'm absolutely not. I hate that.
I mean, I don't like it, but it is what it is.
On the jersey.
It's on the. We added it to the field last year. I didn't think it mattered all that much. It didn't affect a whole lot. I don't like it on the jerseys, but as far as like if we're trying to find places to find money, if you're college sports, that's pretty low on my list of offensive places to find it. Would you rather have, instead of 3.5-minute TV timeouts, would you like to do 5-minute TV timeouts, Chris?
The problem is it's never one or the other. It's always going to end up being both. As
Fair, yes.
So another story, another weird one. Boston College is now a New Balance football school. They've been New Balance in some other sports since 2021, but now it's all including football. When I think of it's not the first time New Balance has done college football. I always think when I think of New Balance, like the shoe company, I think of the Dan Lefevre era Central Michigan in like 2009, 2010. Antonio Brown was there. Butch Jones was the coach. They finished in the top 25. I like it. I want to get more brands involved in this. We only have Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour do pretty much everybody. We need to bring back New Balance, bring back Reebok, bring back when UConn had Aeropostale. Postal? I'm never sure how to say it. I only read it, but Aeropostale, that brand from like the 90s or the 2000s. If you look at Dan Orlovsky when he was at UConn, that's the jersey he had. Very, very weird. What Ubben, as a dad now, are you rocking New Balances?
No, but that's like the struggle that New Balance has is you think New Balance, you think cargo khakis, calf socks, and the thick white, like that's what New Balance is. But they're in my
dad loves New Balance. He does.
They're in kind of a weird spot because they had that ad campaign, like Jamal Murray's in it, Cooper Flagg's in it.
They got Cameron Brink.
Yeah, Cameron Brink's in it. Somebody else. And my wife, not a sports person
Kawhi Leonard, I think.
Yes, Kawhi in there. It's like all these kind of like deep cut like sports people that like if you like sports, like those are not that deep cuts. But my wife does not care about sports at all. I remember we were watching one of those ads came on. I was like, do you know any of these people? And she said, no, I don't know who those people are. Like, okay, well, that's interesting. Like, so they're in like kind of a weird spot. I don't know. I mean, BC football. I mean, we'll see. I think ultimately, like, these things still have to be approved by the schools. It's not like New Balance is just going to go rogue and, you're going to be wearing like white calf high socks on all of your jerseys. Like I get like fans might not be super thrilled about it, but like these are companies that are like trying to be cool and make money and help the schools. So,
I mean, football players are often wearing calf high socks. So I think it actually fits.
Well, but not in the same cargo short dad at a theme park style.
As long as we're not doing that Adidas Zubaz era in basketball.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough.
So we've been doing these top 25 lists at The Athletic, and I pitched a couple weeks ago. I might do it some later in the summer. The top 25 worst college football jerseys of all time. Many of them will be in that 2010s period when you had Adidas doing that, the Michigan Giant M1, the Nebraska had the N.
Those were horrific.
Those were terrible.
Ironically, I do like the Minnesota one where the M like stretches across the chest. They had like the M's on the shoulder.
From like the 90s. Yeah.
Yes.
Iowa brought back the banana peels a couple years ago in an alternate jersey. So that'll be fun. But Boston College, New Balance. Apparently New Balance is on the rise. So good for them.
Chris, you know what time it is right now?
It's time for the heat check. So, Ubben, you lay this out. You wanted to do this on the show. You lay it out.
Yes. So Athlon every year, talks to coaches, and we do some of this obviously at The Athletic. And they kind of have a rundown of some quotes of coaches around the league talking about other coaches from the league. And there's always interesting discussions here. So we're going to run through some of the ones that stood out to us. And we'll start in the SEC with this quote about Florida that said DJ Lagway could compete with Arch for the best quarterback in the league. Couple things on this. Small sample size from DJ Lagway. I think he showed some stuff.
Small sample size for both of them.
That's what I'm saying, though, is small sample size for DJ Lagway, even smaller for Arch Manning. Chris, 1 to 10. We'll give your rating on both of these guys. How sure are you that Texas and Florida have superstar quarterbacks?
I mean, with DJ Lagway, Superstar, I'll say I'm like a 6 out of 10, sure. Like that's like 60%. Arch, even though we've seen him less, I'll say a 7. I think we know the floor on Arch is higher. I think we know that. I don't see any way he's not like a good player. Will he reach that superstar level number 1 pick next year? I don't know. But I feel pretty confident he's going to be solid. But neither of those guys are very experienced when you consider a lot of other people in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, if this is Garrett Nussmeier erasure, is what this is.
You're big. You're a big Garrett Nussmeier guy.
Yes,
LSU.
And he's got actual experience here. I think here with Arch, you see the tools, but I think it's like what you said. I think that there are some expectations upon him that are deeply unfair. I think he's good at dealing with those. He understands like what comes with being Arch Manning and not like Arch Robinson, and like that's part of his experience, and I think he is good about handling that. But that he's just going to walk in and be the best quarterback in the SEC or be a top 5 quarterback. Like, again, the tools are there, but playing quarterback, how many times have we seen guys that have really good tools that it may take a little bit? Like, you saw flashes from DJ Lagway, and you saw flashes from Arch a little bit last year in spot duty. But people are getting a little ahead of their skis on these two guys.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. Like, he thinks those two are 1 and 2. And you're not there. You've got Garrett Nussmeier above them.
Yeah, I think Nussmeier is definitely better than both of those guys. Coming in, is the potential there for both those guys? Like, if you told me either one of those guys was going to be number 1 in the SEC by end of the year, like clearly, all right, like I'll buy that. I think people might be sleeping on Jackson Arnold, who will have a much better offense and a much better group of receivers.
He'll be at Auburn.
He'll be at Auburn.
Got some good receiver there.
I think people maybe are a little bit ahead of themselves on Lenora Sellers. I think John.
You're not a Lenora Sellers guy at South Carolina.
Yeah, I think he's really good, but he had a strong season last year, and by the end of the season, people are talking about him as though he's like a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the sport, and I'm like, I don't quite see that. I don't know where that even came from. I think he needs to.
Did you see the Clemson game? Actually, you did see the Clemson game. You and I watched it together at the walk-ons in College Station before Texas A&M.
I did watch it. I think he was really good, but I just like you know what's in my head on some of these guys, Lagway a little bit, is like watching DJU torch Notre Dame that one year when Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID. Like, that has made me gun shy on all young quarterbacks. I think I have like young quarterback PTSD from that game, because you watch that game, and the other case I think would be like the one that sticks out to me is Garrett Gilbert in the 2009 national championship game of like, well, obviously these guys are just going to step in and be great right away. Like, they're 5 stars. You see all the tools, and it's just, sometimes it's not that simple. And so I think it's really hard on these quarterbacks when all this expectation is put on them when they have done nothing. And I think just give them some time. And I think if they're just good, people are going to be disappointed. And I kind of feel bad for the kids on that front. But maybe that's just me.
Here's a quote from a coach to Athlon about Texas. On that note, said, quote, "Right now, the belief is that Arch will elevate the offense immediately. You can expect a much more dynamic scheme from Sark. This kid is a legit Heisman level package. Provided he produces at that level, the offense will be even better. They're stacked with talent." My question with Texas, honestly, it's not really the Arch part of it. It's everything else. They have to replace a lot of that offensive line, which is one of the best in the country. They have to replace multiple top receivers on the outside. I do believe, and we saw, Arch can make throws that Quinn Ewers couldn't throw, or at least the injured Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, with Quinn coming off the oblique, I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, when you see it in person, there's so much more zip on the ball from Arch. So you'll be able to maybe expand that offense sideline to sideline a little bit more as well. So it'll be interesting. But SEC quarterbacks, you got John Mateer in there at Oklahoma too, Taylon Green at Arkansas, Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. So
it was a bad year last year. I think it'll be good this year, and with the potential to be great.
The floor is a lot higher. There's a lot of superstar potential, but I don't know if I'd say right now any of them are at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Second quote here. This one's for you.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado. Coach says, quote, "It's still a circus. That's not an insult to Deion, but it is." And then another quote, "With his sons gone, this is the year you really wonder what Deion's long-term plan is." Now, you disagree with the circus part of that.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess it depends on what you want to be a circus. Like, yes, there are still going to be cameras around. And yes, Deion is still going to do some weird stuff. Like, he spends a lot of time when they're not recruiting and when they're not practicing, like outside of Boulder. Like,
he's got a talk show.
Well, now the talk show studios are in Boulder, which I learned recently. Okay. So for whatever that's worth, that's the thing. But he spends a lot of time in Texas, which I think is very antithetical to a lot of coaches in college football, college sports that don't spend a lot of time like of their, when they don't have to be in town. But I think the thing that I've taken away from covering Colorado as closely as I have the last few years is what they do is not all that unique, like from the day to day. The things that Deion will say to the team are pretty normal. They might have some like weird guests, like Denzel talks to the team in the spring, and like, yeah, there might be some little Deion like flares to it, but like the meat and potatoes, the skeleton of the program, they don't do a lot of different stuff than everybody else does. You got a team meeting in the morning, you're gonna go practice, you're gonna come back as like, so like, I think the guys that spend time in the program, like I think there is still somehow, despite a lot of proof on the field for Deion, that like they just roll the ball out there and let the kids go to town. And like, yeah, there's probably some connotations in there that are unfriendly, but like Deion won 9 games last year after inheriting a horrific situation. And the team has gotten better. And I do think they're going to be better than people think. I think the average college football fan says, well, they don't have Travis Hunter. They don't have Shador. Colorado's going to take a huge step back. I'm not so sure that that's true. I think they can still win 6, 7, 8 games this year and still be pretty good. And as far as Deion's long-term strategy, they've gone pretty traditional. Like their class this year was like half high school and half transfers.
He's not bringing in 80 new guys.
Yeah, again. And I don't know like what people think is happening at Colorado. Like they're almost uninteresting to a fault at this point, because outside of Deion being a big personality and being willing to say things at the microphone that others won't and campaign to play intra-squad spring games, like the way they actually run the program is not all that unique. And they have a lot of coaching continuity, which I'm a huge believer in. I think they kept almost everyone, if not everyone. I don't think they lost hardly anybody. And they were breaking in 2 new coordinators and a handful of other position coaches last year, including some first-time position coaches. So I don't see this circus at Colorado. I think it's going to be kind of business as usual this year, and their floor is a lot higher than I think people think. And as good as Travis and Shador were, they're going to be pretty good on the lines of scrimmage, improved there. And they might not be as explosive or as fun to watch or as like must-see TV, but I think they're still going to be pretty good.
The other side of that is, where is there for Deion to go? He's got a huge buyout now for him to leave. And the Cowboys thing was never really going to happen. I don't know if he's done enough for an SEC school to hire him yet. No. This year, there weren't any SEC openings, I don't think, last year. Like, there were not many Big Ten SEC coaching openings last season. So there wasn't anywhere for him to go. I don't think him in the NFL is ever going to make sense. So this was going to be the year that determines, all right, can he do it without them? And if he can, if they can win 8, 9 games again, then yeah, maybe then he does get a look at another job. But I don't remember exactly what it was. But that new contract he has a pretty big buyout, I believe, for him to.
Well, and part of this too that you didn't mention is like the reason why Colorado made a whole lot of sense for him is because they were desperate. They handed the keys to the kingdom to him. He can do whatever he wants there. Oh, you want cameras, in your everywhere? Have at it. They let Deion be Deion. And there's not a lot of programs that would put up with that. And some of that's born out of desperation. Now you've got obviously proof of concept. You've gone from a really bad 1-win team to an improved 4-win team that just didn't have the pieces to do what you want to do. So now they're a 4-way tie for the Big 12 title last year. And I don't know that they can compete for that. I think the Big 12 might be a little improved. You look at BYU, you look at Kansas State, and those are the teams that I'm looking at that I don't know that Colorado stacks up well with either of those teams. But I just don't. I think, how pervasive do you think it is in people that follow college football that the bottom is getting to fall out of Colorado without Shador and Travis? I feel like there's a not insignificant percentage of people who see that.
Well, and it's also, you got to remember, like, they added Caden Salter from Liberty,
good quarterback,
good player,
a lot of experience,
like, good player, and they got the 5-star kid
Lewis,
who just came in as well. So, like, they're in a good spot. Like, that's one of the better 1-2 quarterback things in the country. It's hard to have two guys, and your odds of one of those guys being the guy is pretty good. So also, I looked it up. Deion's buyout to leave before December 31st of this year is $12 million. So it's up there. It's not impossible, but it's up there. It drops to $10 million after December 31st. So
yeah, and Deion, not for everybody.
That too. All right. Texas Tech, quote from a coach, anonymous coach to Athlon: if they're not a double-digit win team this season, it will be considered a failure. It's hard to know if that's fair or if spending like this is a smart long-term strategy. I agree and I disagree with this. I agree you got to win at least 10 games this year, Texas Tech. Like that is the amount of money that's been put in, the portal additions they've had, the brand new football building that they just opened. They have given Joey Maguire almost everything you would want there. They have to have a breakthrough season. They have not won a conference championship in forever. They've not been great defensively, but this is a team that's set up to contend in what, like you just said, is a deep Big 12. So I agree. You got to win at least 10 games this year. What I disagree with is the idea that spending like this is or is not a smart long-term strategy. It's the only strategy. Like, that is what you have to do in college football today, especially in a place like Lubbock, where it can be tougher to get kids to come sometimes. So this is Texas Tech's only chance. Like, you have to do this. You're not going to be able to recruit top 5 recruiting classes there. So I completely disagree with that. Texas Tech with Cody Campbell, the guy, the board chair, former player who was going to co-chair that President Trump commission with Nick Saban. He's bankrolling a lot of this. High expectations, but that is how you have to play the game today. So of course Texas Tech would do this.
I think I'd go back to what Walker Jones told me. He is the guy who runs Ole Miss's their collective. I wrote about them last year. You know, last year they were probably
you wrote
probably
like,
number one.
They didn't make the playoff. Was it a failure for Ole Miss? And it was a really interesting story.
Yes. And so they were probably the headline makers in the portal. LSU made a jump, but people are used to LSU collecting players. So them being like the number one transfer class was not that interesting. Texas Tech is kind of in that Ole Miss category of like turning heads and raising eyebrows. I'm like, what are they doing over there? And what Walker said was, I don't know if, you know, they think they told me he spent like $12 or $13 million on their roster, which is about the ballpark that Texas Tech is living in. I don't know if this is going to get to this playoff. But what I do know is what we're not going to get to. We're not going to get to the playoff if we don't spend like this. And that, I think, is how you have to look at it. It's not like we're going all in this 1 year for Texas Tech. It's not like, well, if we don't win 10 games, it's a failure. You got to get multiple bites at the apple. Like, yes, they're going to be disappointed if they don't win 10 games. But the answer is not, well, this didn't work. We got to go back to the old way. We got to slash the budget. No, you got to keep reinvesting. That's the only thing. Like, this is what the sport is, and people can complain every time you see a recruit go somewhere. You know, it's like a louder version of like, oh, well, they just paid for him, or if you have a roster, oh, they just bought that roster. You kind of heard a little bit of that with Ohio State. It's like, yeah, they did. Like,
so
yeah, that's broke boy mentality. It's like what it is.
Like, Oregon still gets people. When Oregon will get a good commit or a transfer or whatever, everybody say, oh, Oregon must have just paid more money for him. Like, that's an insult.
Yes.
Like, even if they did. Like, same with that kid who went to Miami instead of Georgia, that offensive lineman. Like, who can't? Like, you're allowed to pay players now. That's the game. And whether or not you like it, that doesn't mean he doesn't also like that school that he went to. By the way, Manny Navarro and Grace Rayner are great writers for The Athletic. They will always ask recruits at the Under Armour camp, like, about offers and what they're getting and who they're picking. Most top kids are not picking the highest bid. Like, they're picking a high bid, but they're also trying to figure out what a good fit is. So I think it's really disingenuous when you just assume, oh, they're just buying players, as if the players, one, are just blindly taking the money and don't have any agency in what they're deciding to do. No, this is what you do.
And this is part of what the Texas Tech plight in the world is. There's a lot of Texas Techs out there, okay?
Yeah.
In 2000, let's say the peak of the Leach era, 2009, what was the roadmap for Texas Tech to continue? Like, so in the state of Texas, there's the I-35 corridor. Okay, that's what they talk about in recruiting. That's where like all the talent is. Okay, so like Oklahoma's going to get some of those guys. Obviously, Austin's on there. Like Waco, Baylor gets some of those guys. TCU can get some of those guys. It's very hard for Texas Tech to recruit because they're out in West Texas. Lubbock, very underrated college town. It's bigger than you think, but it is, respectfully, no cactus emojis, it is in the middle of nowhere.
You do not drive there from Dallas.
Yes. Well, some people do. It's hard to get to Lubbock, okay?
Yeah.
It is remote, but it's fine when you get there. The roadmap, there wasn't really one. Like, if you can't recruit in that I-35 corridor, like Baylor was able to do some stuff and upgrade their facilities and had a really good coach, and that helps you. But now when you have oil money, like that's the roadmap to trying to play to exercise some upward mobility. It also helps that they're in a league now that doesn't have Texas and Oklahoma. Like talent-wise, Texas Tech should be as talented as anybody in their conference. So it's going to be interesting. People are going to be watching. There's going to be people clowning on them if they lose a dumb game. But again, I would go back to that Walker Jones mentality, which I think is what everybody has to do if you want to win. Yeah, paying a ton of money for a roster does not guarantee you anything. But paying no money for a roster guarantees you a lot, which is sadness and frustration and looking up at a lot of teams. So
yeah,
that is what it is.
Quote from North Carolina, about North Carolina, from an anonymous coach to Athlon. How Bill Belichick adjusts to the structure of the college game is going to be crucial. It's less time you get with the players, which means it's less football intelligence. Dave, what do you think?
Well, hold your laughter while I say this out loud. You only get 20 hours with the players, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 hours.
That's the biggest air quotes you could possibly have. You only get 20 hours with the players. I do think this is the biggest question to me about Belichick. And, I read his book, wrote about that, and he talked about when he was watching film with Tom Brady, there were a couple times that, like, Brady would see stuff that, like, he didn't. And he's like, it was like watching film with your equal. And like, that was a big part of what he revered about Tom Brady. He talked about him a lot in the book. Not anything about Robert Kraft. A lot of Tom Brady in there. Love Gio Lopez. Think he's a good player. Max Johnson, we'll see what he is coming back from his. They're not going to be showing Bill Belichick stuff on film that he doesn't see. And I think that is going to be an adjustment of like teaching guys stuff and showing guys stuff and then having them apply it. When you haven't coached college football literally ever, like the guys you're coaching at UNC are not going to be as good as the guys that you brought to the Patriots. You have a lot less control over that. And I think that how he adjusts to that, I think will ultimately tell the story of North Carolina's season this year. So I it's not really about the time as much as the football intelligence. And, it's like going from being a college professor. You could be a great college professor. And if you've got to teach third graders, that's kind of a different skill set. Not to insult North Carolina's players, but it's just different.
Well, yeah, North Carolina and athlete academics. Who would ever make a connotation like that? You might say it doesn't matter if you have a decided schematic advantage, is what you're saying.
That is perhaps what we would be saying.
Charlie Weiss came from the New England Patriots, talked about how smart he was. And they won at the beginning, but they didn't later. So like the Gio Lopez, quarterback transferred in from South Alabama, that was after spring practice.
Very hard to do.
That's going to be an adjustment as well, which, by the way, I didn't know. I'm reading the ESPN story about that from Eli Lederman. Lopez joined North Carolina on a 2-year, $4 million contract with 3 seasons of eligibility remaining. It's going to be very curious how this all plays out in the next couple of years with contracts and eligibility and whatnot.
I don't know how serious they were about being in the Nico sweepstakes. From what I understand, not very involved. But I thought that was actually a pretty interesting fit if they could have pulled it off. But I think you probably get less nonsense. Sure, but you get less nonsense with like a South Alabama guy moving up that's like trying to prove himself versus like the Nico situation where like you're probably making, I mean, fair to say Tennessee to North Carolina is probably a step down, especially coming from a playoff team to North Carolina's been pretty average. So
like when you talk to NFL coaches who come to college, they always talk about you're with the players less, especially as the head coach when you've got to raise money and do all these other things. And, Belichick he's on the road recruiting. He's doing that type of stuff. They're also notably, again, our great colleague Grace Rayner wrote a recruiting story a couple days ago, noted that North Carolina has more commits in the next recruiting class from California, 3, than they do in the state of North Carolina, 2.
And North Carolina's pretty good recruiting ground.
And it's going to be a good year for North Carolina recruiting in the state as well. And there was a prominent high school coach who Grace quoted who said, when he got the job, he came through, but I haven't heard anything from UNC since. So curious how that recruiting situation is going to go. Also on Belichick, on June 1st, his buyout for him to leave did officially drop to $1 million. That doesn't matter right now. He's going to coach the football season. The Jordan Hudson drama is not going to impact how he coaches and how that works. I know
nobody's talking about this, but he is dating a much younger woman.
I know some people. There's people talking that he may not go to. Yes, he's going to make it to the season. All he wants to do is coach football, and nobody in the NFL is hiring him, like especially right now. So he's here for the season. Now, if UNC wins 9-10 games, it'd be very easy for Belichick to leave and go back to the NFL and then potentially break the wins record, which is what he wants to do. But he's not leaving. North Carolina is not firing him because the first 3 years of his contract are guaranteed. North Carolina is not spending $30 million to fire Bill Belichick over Jordan Hudson. So we can just stop with that nonsense. But that happened, just so people know, the buyout for him to leave did drop. Now let's talk about another school that is always spending a lot of money.
Early adopters, Miami.
Coach says to Athlon, quote, "Is Carson Beck worth all that money? No one really knows right now, but that's the question you have to ask." And then another one, I think there's a bigger question here on how and why they spend what they do on the guys they pick. It's sort of like a Dodgers or Yankees mindset, spending on top-end recruits and portal guys and not really a team-focused culture. You're still in Florida. You still have to prioritize the high schools, and they've done that in NIL. So first, on Beck, what do you think?
Well, let's start with why no one really knows right now, which is the biggest question, which is because he didn't really throw in the spring. Very ugly. I mean, I was at the SC Championship. As soon as I saw that hit, I was like, that's the kind of hit that messes up your elbow. Seriously. And so I was like, we might not see Carson Beck again. And then you kind of wondered when he came back in for the weird handoff at the end to win the game. But like immediately I thought this is going to be serious. And it obviously was serious. Did not play in the playoff game. Didn't do anything in the spring. And we saw a lot of bad Carson Beck tape in this
is a guy,
season.
by the way, this is a guy going into last season people thought could be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft.
Yes. And I think part of this was when you watched Carson Beck, and this was I found to be the most confounding thing about him last year. When you watched him in 2023, the tools don't jump off the page at you. He wasn't like a super recruit. He's got good size, but like there's arm strength's not that great. It's okay, mobility. But the thing that separated him was decision making, and when the guy was open, he was hitting them. Now, big difference. We talked about this a lot last year. When you're throwing to Ladd McConkey, not everybody loves him, but when you throw to Ladd McConkey and you throw to Brock Bowers, things look a little bit easier. Those guys are pretty good at getting open. Brock Bowers, pretty good at contested catches, very tough to cover. So he wasn't having to make a lot of these like anticipation throws and throwing into tight windows. Like Ladd McConkey, pretty good at getting open. Showed that in the NFL last year. He did well for me in fantasy this year, lest anyone think I'm anti-Ladd McConkey.
No, but you and I went into last season thinking Georgia didn't have great weapons.
Yeah, like Dylan. You watch Dylan Bell, you're like, ugh. Dylan Bell's like, and they lost. Rara Thomas, they use out, and Dom Lovett never really hit for them, which I thought was weird. He had a really great run at Missouri and just never really hit at Georgia. So they had pieces there, but you watch them and you're like, he's not throwing anybody. So we'll have better weapons. I think that's the biggest thing working in his favor. I think, probably an upgrade at offensive coordinator as well there. So I think there's a potential for a kind of bounce back year for Carson Beck. But I'd be nervous. 3.2, 3.4 ish is what we think he's getting, and that's a lot of money. But when you look at the pretty modest talent level on the portal this year, because so many people are paying to keep guys, I mean, you weren't going to do better, I don't think. I mean,
and they did add Pena, the wide receiver from Syracuse.
Yeah.
Which was much needed. Miami did need some upgrades at receiver, losing.
They got him. Trevor Pena is a good player. Like, if you watched Syracuse last year, you saw him make a ton of plays. Syracuse is going to miss him. Fran Brown might disagree with that, but they've got to pick it up a little bit there. So again, this Dodgers-Yankees mindset. Miami has been the early adopter. They have consistently landed splashy transfers. More of them have worked than have not. And they didn't really, I mean, last year winning 10 games. I mean, Cam Ward.
Look, if you beat Syracuse,
a lot of that.
If you beat Syracuse, you go into the ACC championship game. Like, you may be in the playoff. Like, they were really close to making the playoff last year. They just losing to Syracuse and Georgia Tech. Not the games you would expect, but those are the games that Mario Cristobal sometimes loses. And those are the games he can't have if they want to make the playoff.
And so you can criticize this strategy. Chris, since 2003, how many 10-win seasons do you think Miami has had?
Ooh, 3?
1 with Mark Richt.
Wow. Really?
Yeah. And they won 10 games last year. So, like, listen.
And that was
about Dodgers, Yankees.
Wait. So last year is 2.
Last year was their second one. Yes.
Okay. That Mark Richt team. Oh, we got the balloons on the screen here. That Mark Richt team, that's the one that reached number 2 in the country and then lost its last 3 games or something like that.
Something along those lines.
Yeah,
I don't remember 2017 Miami super well, but yes.
They beat Notre Dame. That's when we declared the U was back and all that. Then I think they lost to Pitt, I think maybe the next week. But no, it's again, like we said with Texas Tech, this is how you have to win. Now you have to make sure you hit on guys and make sure all the money you spend doesn't change the in-game decision-making and deciding not to kneel the ball against Georgia Tech 2 years ago. So it's a combination of things. Last one here. This one jumped out to me because I don't totally agree with it. It's about Michigan. It's about Michigan. From an anonymous coach to Athlon, quote, "It's tempting to look at these rosters after the national title and define them by what they lose to the draft every year. But we don't do that with Kirby Smart or Nick Saban or those programs. Michigan is an elite level recruiting program. So yeah, they lost to Mason Graham, but they're ready to plug in that next guy. It's not plug and play, but it's close." I agree and I disagree. I do agree that Michigan's defense is going to be really, really good again this year, despite losing a bunch of guys. We saw that in the bowl game against Alabama. It's a lot of backups on defense there that was really shutting down that opted-in Alabama offense. But Michigan's not recruiting at an elite level. It didn't under Harbaugh. You're not typically bringing in top 5 classes here. You're typically bringing in top 15, 10 classes here. What Michigan was elite at under Jim Harbaugh was taking those 4-star guys and turning them into, day 1, day 2 NFL draft picks. And I think that's what they're doing again, at least on defense. I have a lot of questions about the offense because you just lost that tight end who was your entire offense last year. So Bryce Underwood comes in, Mikey Keene, the quarterback from Fresno State. I got to see some weapons on the outside. They could not throw to their wide receivers last year. Defensively, I think Michigan's set and great. They do a really good job there. But I'm not ready that Michigan's all plug and play. They just went from the national title game to 7-5 to 8-5. And I know they finished with Alabama and Ohio State, and they figured it out. But they also lost to Illinois and Indiana and had a lot of ugly performances, losses that Michigan typically doesn't have.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think people do actually hold some of this against Kirby and Saban when you're talking about losing guys. There's some skepticism there. I think when you had guys that had recruiting bona fides that were ready to step in, it was less so. But I don't think people looked at like, oh, they lost Dante Hightower, like they're going to be fine. It's like, no, that's a big loss, and they didn't start churning some of that offensive talent really. When you talk about that crazy run of receivers that they had from like 18 or 17 to like 21, when they had that run, that was a little bit different. That's passed by at this point. We'll see if Kalen DeBoer can get it back. But I think people look past that a little bit more than you think. And I certainly don't think Michigan has earned a lot of the benefit of the doubt there, especially with as much backsliding as they did last year. But I think offensive scheme is really underrated in terms of what is holding Michigan back at this point.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it. A shout out to Athlon. A lot of great stuff there. Go read their stuff. Gave us some good podcast content. Got a couple things left on this episode. One, I threw this into the doc right before we started recording because our colleague Ralph Russo posted on Blue Sky a thing that created a topic in one of our group chats, and I figured it'd be a good podcast conversation. It's unrelated to football, but everybody can relate to this. Ralph said, quote, I have a colleague who saves contacts into his phone by putting both the first name and the last name in the first name field of the contact, and it bothers me at an irrational level. I know who this colleague is because he has shared contacts with me. I will not say who it is.
Yeah, we won't out him, but we know
for the sake of privacy. I don't think this is that weird. Do you think
it's pretty weird? It's pretty weird. Now, I will say, and this is not a credit, this is technology catching up with you. In 2013, this would have been even more insane because we didn't have quite the same level. Now, when you search your contacts, you just search and people like come up and it's a little bit easier to find people. But in the scrolling days, dude, that's like, what are we doing? Like, I don't know how. That's insane. That's insane to me. And I am a long time strict first name, last name. My phone is a phone book. It is not like a list of nicknames and emojis and like it's very straightforward. We were talking about this. I think mom and dad are the only changes, and that's probably from me putting them in my phone in like high school, probably. And they just graduated up from like my Nokia playing Snake phone in like the 9th grade or whatever.
I feel like even back in I'm trying to remember like my first like flip phone, an LG one in high school. Like, I don't even know if you had first and last name in the address book. I feel like you just.
I don't remember exactly how that all is. All I know is that that you had to do a lot of scrolling, but I probably only had like 25 numbers in high school. Now we're like into a crazy number.
But as we were talking about this in the group chat, you said something, and that is, you have your wife's full name in her phone contact.
Yes.
Is it your last name?
It is my last name. Weirdly,
this is weirder to me.
That's not weird.
Why does your wife need the last name?
I don't know. I don't remember when I changed it. I'm sure it was quickly after the wedding. Ironically, though, so in her contact card, and I don't remember putting this in, it's the address that she lived, like when we met. I don't put people's address in there. I don't know how that got in there, but it's still there. So I haven't really touched it. But
my wife, who I only have her first name in my phone because I'm a normal person, it does have.
You ever get a text and you're like, which one am I?
No, I don't need to know which Gabby it is because there's a one there. That's why I don't need the last name. Do you have other Beccas? And if it's another, I got to think it's the other Becca. Like, no, like, do you have? Okay. My wife's childhood address is under her card, so I must have. Maybe back in the day in the mid 2000s, like that happened as part of a contact exchange. I don't.
Maybe
totally
I don't know. I don't remember ever putting in an address or why I would do that. But
do you have? So I have my mom and dad as mom, dad.
That's the only exception, and then I have one person that has a nickname in my phone because literally no one calls them by any other name. And it would be confusing if their full name came up. So that's it. But other than that, that's the only person in my phone that has a nickname, or it's mom and dad and one friend from like junior high that obviously we still talk.
So like I like my siblings, my brother, I just have his first name. I don't have a last name.
No, that's a full name situation.
That's for a sibling. I know your family situation is a little bit different, but like that seems strange to me. To
Maybe
put
listen.
for a thing.
For me, it's about uniformity and simplicity. And if we start getting out of hand here, it's not about recognizing. It's just about like, oh, okay, like that's just who's in my phone. I don't know. I know I started this policy very early on, and I just have not deviated from it. So if you've got an exception, you gotta.
I need to double check if my full name is in my wife's phone. If it is, I think I'd be offended. I think I would be offended if my last name
my full name is in my wife's phone also. I'd have to check I don't remember.
I would not like that. I would be like, am I not good enough? Am I not good enough to just be Chris in your phone? I'm not like everybody else in your phone.
I don't know. I'm curious. I'd like to hear from the readers or listeners, excuse me. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like this is a thing that everybody just sort of does and nobody really thinks about. And I'm curious, like, where this lands. It's a bit like the wiping standing up versus sitting down thing. People just do it.
We don't need to get into that on this episode.
We don't need to get into it on this episode, but I'm just saying there's certain things that people just do and they don't think about. And like the breakdown of humanity, you know, in America, I'd be curious I feel like how this differs in age. Like, my theory is that the older folks would have way more nicknames and the younger folk, like Gen Z folks, would have way more nicknames. But I feel like the millennials might be the first name, last name people because we didn't grow up on cell phones in the same way that Gen Z did. Like, I got my first phone in like 8th grade, but you just put it in your backpack. I didn't really use it, but I did. I will say this really quickly because this is jogged my memory. I'm curious if anybody else ever played this game before. I'm curious what it was. I would borrow my mom's Sprint phone, which I later lost.
I know where this is going.
And there was a game on there that was a football game, and you got to choose which like play you did. It would be like long pass, short pass, outside run, inside run, and you clicked what you did, and then it would tell you the outcome of that play. I feel like this game is lost to time, but it was on Sprint cell phones in like this would have been like 2002.
It kind of sounds familiar. Did you just see? You didn't see the actual play.
No, you wouldn't see the actual play, but there'd be like an animation, kind of like like the Tech Mobile like touchdown animation. It'd be like a quick animate, like very it's obviously like it's like digital, like black. It wasn't like graphics or whatever. You don't really have like a screen. I'm curious if anybody else has ever played this game. I'm going to Google this when we get off of here. It was a Sprint football game where you called the plays, and then like I don't know. I remember it being very fun. But it seems now in retrospect, I feel like I would not have enjoyed it nearly as much.
The only game I remember playing on my mom's phone as a kid was Snake. We'd play that getting haircuts.
That's classic.
Did you call it the car phone back in the day?
Yeah, initially, because it was like mounted in the car. You didn't take it everywhere.
But it was like a cell phone, but we just left it in the car.
Yeah,
so
car phone.
Phone. Like that. Yeah, that's for younger people. That's what it used to be like.
That's tough. That's tough look.
You used to be free of this thing on your everyday life. So we're gonna wrap the show up with one last segment, and that is the one cool thing. Got a lot of drops on here. I need to figure out how to get more of them into the show. Maybe that's a way to finish the show.
Perhaps.
Shout out to Brent Musburger. The NBA Finals, Thunder versus Pacers. It's about to start. Should be very fun. But I'm having one issue with the discussion, which is this. It is not a matchup of two teams looking for their first NBA championship because the Thunder get to claim the Seattle Supersonics title from whatever the 60s or 70s. They won one championship. And so technically the Thunder have won a title. I hate this. This should not count at all. How do you feel about that? To me, nobody in Oklahoma City has celebrated that championship. They don't even claim the Sonics, basically. I think this is ridiculous. What do you think?
Outrageous to me. I think there's some exceptions. Like in pro sports, it does get kind of weird. Like moving is just not part of college. Like if you get a new AD, you don't have to worry about campus up and moving, or the president changed. Like, oh no, my favorite team might move to another like place. But every time the ownership changes, there's like some very nervous moments of like, so what's your intentions here with my favorite franchise? It's like people get freaked out. It's like in the NFL, you had like the weird thing with like the Browns leaving for Baltimore, but then they come back like as an expansion team. And so that gets into messy territory. But in the history of franchise swiping, Oklahoma City taking the Sonics, that's like a top 5 like nastiest one. And so that especially you can't take credit for. Sometimes if there is some connective tissue, it's like young people that don't know why the Lakers are called the Lakers when they live in Los Angeles. It's because they came from the land of 10,000 lakes in Minneapolis, and then they just kept it. Or the Utah Jazz.
You don't go to Utah for that sweet jazz, the history of jazz in Utah.
The Utah Jazz is the funniest one. The Lakers is probably number 2.
Did you see, by the way, the Jazz got new jerseys that are like the old jerseys? They're like the 90s look again. Yeah,
they're beautiful. Yeah, those are legit. The purple ones with the snow caps.
Yeah, they brought them back. So good on you, Utah. So I have a take here, and that is if a city loses a team, but then gets a new team, that new team should get to claim the history of the old team.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Wild in the NHL should get to claim the history of the Minnesota North Stars.
I like this take, yes.
Not the Dallas Stars. The Houston Texans should get the history of the Houston Oilers, not the Tennessee Titans, even though I know they were the Oilers when they moved. Because to me, a championship is not, I don't associate necessarily a championship with a franchise, with a business. I associate it with a city and its fans. The people of Houston celebrated the Oilers. The people of Tennessee did not. They should not get to talk about love you blue, Houston Oilers.
Yeah, so the Titans were wearing the like Oilers alternates. Gross.
Yeah. Gross. I don't like that. And there are some exceptions to this though. So the example would be right here. There is no team in Seattle. So why shouldn't the Thunder get to claim that? And an addendum to that is if a team moves and completely rebrands, you are dropping the history. You don't get that previous history. So the Sonics move to Oklahoma City, become the Thunder. You're not the Sonics anymore. You don't get to claim it. Seattle gets to hold on to it. I treat it almost like a folded franchise. The Hartford Whalers, they're now the Carolina Hurricanes. They sometimes wear a Whalers throwback. I'm okay with that in general, but I'm not going to associate Hartford Whalers history with them. And that brings us back to the Lakers. They were the Minneapolis Lakers and then became the Los Angeles Lakers. In that situation, I'm okay with both cities claiming Minneapolis Lakers history.
What?
Because they were the Lakers. Like they were the Lakers back then.
Okay,
like
maybe.
The people of Minnesota never celebrated a championship with the Timberwolves, but they were there for the Minneapolis Lakers, so they can associate.
I mean, you got to be pretty old at this point if you were around for the Lakers and the T-Wolves.
in a Lakers, hey, we have X amount of championships, however many they have. That's still the Lakers. So I'm okay with both sides claiming that. But if you move and you change your name, you don't get that anymore. The Colts can claim the Colts and the Ravens can both claim some Baltimore Colts history to me because they kept the name.
You know what I do like? I'm sort of iffy on that take, but you know what I do like in terms of expansion recently is we're getting back into, we need unique mascots in sports in general. I don't know who decided that we were just going to roll with bulldogs and tigers when there's like not as many lions as you would think, but we got the Utah Mammoth. I like that one. Seattle Kraken.
But that should be plural. It should have been mammoths.
Well, I don't care about that. All I know is that in college sports, the best mascots are the ones where you're the only ones that have them. The Florida Gators is a great example. Obviously, the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Crimson Tide, Volunteers.
Yes. Well, the Volunteers, that's more of a
Sooners.
history thing. I just think leaning into that, Sooners I don't really like because it's more like we're not here for a history lesson.
I know, but I mean, nobody else
pick a cool animal and lean into it.
You're the Sooners. You're the only Sooners. So when Jack Harlow says Sooner in his song, he's referring to them.
Yeah. But we need to get back to that. And I'm glad things are shifting in that direction. Like the Kraken, I don't particularly like hockey. Incredible mascot. Great logo. The Mammoth, same thing. So
Oklahoma City
I like
Thunder.
that.
I like the name.
No.
I hate the colors and the logo are horrible. If they wear those dark jerseys again at home for the finals, I'm going to lose my mind. It's a terrible
Not a huge
look.
Thunder fan of the mascot.
But I like the name.
I just want us to. I want us to lean into cool animals. That's what we need. You can't have a cool thunder mascot. A sound. You can't have a sound walking around. That's not a thing. Okay.
Look. I mean, we had a storm here in Dallas last night, and then the thunder shook the house. So, I mean, thunder can have its effects.
At some point, it has to be anthropomorphized on your home floor. And I don't know what the Thunder does for their mascot. You'll have to forgive me. I don't know. Do they even have one? Oh no, they have Rumble. They have Rumble the Bison. Okay, that's actually a good mask. Why couldn't you just be the Bison? Go do that.
Or Bison and do an Oklahoma. What about the Pacers?
I mean, I get it. Like, it's fine. I don't like it. I just want cool animals. That's all I want. I don't want us to get too like deep in the weeds. Like, Pacers is like, okay, that's cool, but also that's like not a thing. Like, what are we talking about here?
So the name Pacers comes from a combination of the state's history with the harness racing Pacers, which is horse racing, and the pace car.
The pace car for Indy 500.
Pace car for the Indy 500. So
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I like the nod to the the locality of it versus like the Utah Jazz. I just want cool animals. That's all I want. If you look at the animal kingdom, there is a untapped market of a bunch of cool animals that we are just not we're not leaning into it enough. Like there's a lot out there, So anyway.
Well, we're going to have a lot of great coverage of the NBA Finals on the Athletics. So make sure you check out the great writers there. I don't think they're going to give the history of the names, but it should be fun. That's going to do it here for the show. Again, please leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. Email us at bunchformationpod@gmail.com. I know we promised Antonio Morales was going to be here to talk about teams we want to play with in College Football 26. He couldn't make it, so we're going to try to get that on in a future episode, but we do have that story coming on The Athletic pretty soon. Stay tuned for that. Again, check out the Reddit AMA on Thursday if you can, and we'll put that link in the show notes.
Leave us a review.
So for David Ubben, I'm Chris Vanini. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next week.